Buongiorno a tutti e tutte, sono Federico Dolce, il portavoce nazionale di MERA25 in Italia. Oggi siamo qui con un ospite a cui io tengo tantissimo, che ho avuto la fortuna di conoscere lo scorso 15 maggio ad Atene, in occasione della Nakba Day, della manifestazione per i diritti dei palestinesi in ricordo della tragedia della Nakba che abbiamo fatto con invitati da tutta Europa ad Atene. E, ho voluto fortemente che lei potesse raccontarci cosa è stata la sua esperienza, la sua vita, la sua testimonianza, perché credo che sia fondamentale anche per il pubblico italiano. Lei è Iris Hefter, è membro di questa associazione che si chiama Jewish Voices for Peace. And hi, Iris. Welcome to Italy. As I was telling, I was so moved by your testimony, by your speech, that I wanted you to repeat it and to tell us, Italian, what it is like in Germany right now, what it's like to do what you do, and what it's like for being a Jewish advocate for Palestinian rights in the West.
Yes, well, thank you for the invitation. It's not that easy to be a Jewish activist for the Palestinian rights, but actually we are talking also about human rights for everybody, because we are really fighting a lot of objection from all the West, and we see it not only in Germany, we see it already also in other countries in the West. There is something unique for Germany in the sense that, the German story is that because of the Holocaust, they are supporting Israel and the Jews. And for them, the Jews is something very specific. And now we see how crazy it is because they are supporting Jews who are for genocide. And actually, they are supporting Christian Jews. This is what I would say, or Zionist, which is something that is closer to the Protestant Christians. If you look into Zionism, you see that it's a movement that wants to come back to the Bible. So the Jews, the Protestant Jews, I would say, came to Palestine and say, I mean, this is where our ancestors lived, and in the Bible it is also written this place and this place, and we are going back there. It's also a movement that came from the Protestant Europe, with the idea of this ethics of moral and work, which is something that Germans can very much, attached to. So we are the bad Jews in Germany today. And in addition, Germans are claiming to be morally better than everyone else. So it's not, just like in other places where they say we have our interest, we need Israel to be there as our base. Of course, also in the USA, they try to say that it's morally more important to support Israel against terror organizations and whatever. But in Germany, it has this flair of we are doing the right thing, and they are prosecuting Jews also now, which is something very dangerous. I mean, that's a development that we see in the last years, and it was still a taboo until now. So now you see there is less inhibition in all the public sphere in Germany. The political culture is changing, and Germany wants to be great again, and therefore they are allowed to do everything in the name of fighting anti-Semitism, which is, of course, the cover story, but it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I mean, Germany was, together with the USA and with Great Britain, one of the last states that supported South Africa, the apartheid in South Africa. So one could say, if you are so worried about racism and anti-Semitism, how could you support apartheid in South Africa? And that's the same that they are doing in Israel. It's their own interest. It has nothing to do with Jews.
Yeah, exactly. And you tell very often the story of what actually happened to you in the past few months when you try to demonstrate for what you believe in.
So after the 7th of October, it was forbidden to have demonstrations in Germany until the 26th of October. And the demonstrations that were prohibited were pro-Palestinian, what they call pro-Palestinian demonstration, while the state was organizing and financing pro-Israeli demonstrations. So the state took a very clear line, and the establishment, the press, everything was pro-Israeli, while this is happening in the place where we have the biggest Palestinian community in Europe. I mean, unlike, you know, in France, where you have hardly Palestinians, or you have Algerians who are going on the streets, for example, or in London. I mean, you don't see in the demonstrations many Palestinians. In Germany, they live. So we are talking about the ancestors of people that were suffering, that were expelled in the Nakba and afterwards, who have family members in Gaza, in the West Bank, in other places, who are not even allowed to grieve for them, to shout, to have feelings. So it was a totally dehumanization of Palestinians, like we see it in Israel. So you can see, and you can also foresee what is going to happen, because Germany is going through a process of Israelization, I would say. So it was forbidden to have demonstrations, and we in the Jewish Voice for Peace, we applied to have a demonstration against the genocide, and it was forbidden. So I talked with some law professionals, and I asked them, what will happen if I will go alone with a sign by myself? Then it's not a demonstration, actually. And they told me, you're right, it's not a demonstration, so you can do that. So I went to Neukölln, which is the neighbor where many Palestinians live, and mainly, you know, working class Palestinian. And the propaganda in Germany is that they hate Jews. They are all anti-Semites. And the police really took over the streets where they live and, you know, have their restaurants and whatever. There is a very big street that we call usually Gaza Street, because you have there, you know, many restaurants, Palestinian, and also Syrian people, and the police was suppressing them heavily. I mean, we saw really pictures like in the West Bank. So I decided that I will go there and I will stand with a sign. And on the sign was written in German and in English, as an Israeli and a Jew, stop the genocide in Gaza. And I took my Israeli passport with me on that occasion, because I thought, you can never know.
Just to be sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's better to be Israeli in this occasion, on that occasion. And so the moment I just went to the place, Hermannplatz in Neukölln, 5 policemen came to me and told me that I have to take off the sign. And I tried to understand why, actually. Say, no, it's not allowed to do that. And I said, no, it's allowed. According to the law, according to the German constitution, I'm allowed to do that. You cannot forbid that to me. So since I refused, they took me, I was detained, and I was kept in a police car, sitting in a cell. You know, there is a camera directed into your face. And I also wrote my lawyer that I'm there, and he came. And in that time, they took, the police officer took my passport and said that they have to clear what's the issue now, and how, I mean, whether I'm allowed or not allowed. So the moment they saw that I have an Israeli pass, of course, they treat me a bit differently. Next to me, there was a Palestinian that was locked, and his cell was closed, mine was open. He shouted more. At some point, I understood that he's Palestinians, because he was shouting also Free Palestine. I was treated better. And then the policeman came to me and told me that it's not allowed to have pro-Palestinian demonstrations here. So I said, first of all, it's not a demonstration, and second, it's not pro-Palestinian. It's pro-human beings, whatever. It's also pro-Israeli. My family lives there. And this is actually, now we see how Israel is falling into, you know, the absent, but falling, you know, driving on high speed. There, at that point, they started to be more empathetic to me, the policemen. And I started to talk with them a bit. You know, it was not that dangerous or threatening. And then the police officer came back and said, yes, I'm right. I mean, I'm allowed to do that, but I cannot stand on this place. I can stand on another place. They will escort me and they will keep an eye on me so that I'll be safe and no one will do anything to me. So I stood there for 2 hours. I was just getting hugs from people that were passing by, people from all over the world, also white Germans that told me, thank you that you are doing that. I'm married to an Egyptian woman. She's not getting out of home in the last 2 weeks. She's so afraid because there is so much hate speech against Muslims. They are all terrorists. They are all bad people. They all hate Jews, whatever. So thank you very much for that. And many other people, it was also on a junction. So people were beeping with cars and marking signs and all that.
Did they ever give back the sign to you? Because I read that you wanted to put it into a memorial for Palestinian.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, they gave me the sign back and I stayed with it. Yeah. But 2 weeks later, I was on a demonstration with this sign. And then all of a sudden, the police said in the beginning, they say you're not allowed to say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, whatever they have their instructions. But then also in the middle of the demonstration, the police said, you're not allowed to shout, stop the genocide. Which I didn't do. I just have this sign. But, it was very arbitrary. We live really in authoritarian times, so it's very arbitrary. And while they were saying that, afterwards they came to me and another man that stood next to me, and they detained us both. On that time, there was a person, Eyal Weizmann from Forensic Architecture, that had a speech, and he was talking about genocide all the time in his speech. But we were detained. Then they took our signs, and then we got also a claim, from the police for incitement to hate speech or something like that. Meanwhile, they stopped the hard investigation they were doing. Of course, there is no hate speech when you say stop something and then stop genocide. Yeah, what is the incitement here? And of course, they asked me whether I'm willing that my sign will be confiscated. I said, of course, I'm not willing that you will do that, and I objected. So at some point, they wrote me that I can come and pick it up. So I picked it up, and now I have it at home. And I hope that one day I can give it to the Museum of Free Palestine.
You surely will. I'm confident you will. Well, you mentioned before this concept of bad Jews, which is something horrific. And, the whole definition, we heard it a lot here as well. And in all the West, we've been hearing that a lot, the self-hating Jews and stuff like that. That is a misconception that relies on this stereotype. It is a Jew stereotype that as a Jew, you have to support Zionism, you have to support the apartheid and the Israel state. But we do have a lot of voices, like we have the work you do with the Jewish Voices for Peace. The very same is happening in the US, but also in Israel. We have a lot of association that advocates for Palestinian rights and for peace. And we have this amazing association called Break the Silence that tell us what happens in the West Bank, in the occupied territories. And I truly believe that if that's one missing piece in the narrative we use in the West to justify all of this, it's what is like over there when we don't look, because there is no real doubt of what is happening right now in Gaza. There is different judgment amongst who thinks that this is a vengeance, a well-deserved vengeance, or a genocide that is following decades of apartheid and denied rights to the Palestinian people. How do you deal with that? Like how much work you have to do with the Jewish Voices for Peace, and to actually feel like you don't embrace this stereotype, and somehow you don't fit the main Western narrative that we have for our stereotype of Jews?
Well, it's a hard work because, you know, we are facing again, first of all, the fact that it's Germans or Gentiles that decide what is a Jew, who is a Jew. Yeah. So this is something which is not new. That was already the case, you know, during the Nazi time. It was the Germans that decided who is a Jew. At that point, it was according to blood. Now it's according to ideology. And now it helps them. If it's according to an ideology, and that's the trick here, that means that also as a German and a grandson of Nazi grandparents, you can be a Jew. Because if you will become a Zionist, then you're a Jew, and then you are redeemed. Okay, so you are now forgiven for all the sins, because first of all, you're not the perpetrator, you are the Jew. And many of Germans also have this story of, yeah, my grandmother was a Jew. So suddenly you see here so many Germans, you know, with Jewish roots, because it becomes something very fashionable to be a Jew. There are also some cases of people that pretend to be Jews that became very, I mean, they got also high in the hierarchy of some synagogue and whatever, and they are not Jewish at all. You know, they just invented themselves this identity. So we're not talking really about politics in Germany, we're talking about identity. So they have to be, you know, Zionist because this way they are good Germans, or they are the new Jews. So actually they are telling us now, what does it mean to be a Jew? And they are the better Jews. They can tell us how a Jew should be, what a Jew should think, and what a Jewish woman should support. And if she is not doing that, then she's a bad Jew. So we see this splitting, and we see also this stereotype, and this is something anti-Semitic, of course. It's under cover of fighting anti-Semitism, but it's anti-Semitic to decide for other Jews what does it mean to be a Jew. And in addition, when they are saying that anti-Zionism is actually anti-Semitism, what they are saying is actually that the Jewish victims of the Holocaust were anti-Semitic, because only before the Second World War, only 3% of the Jews were Zionist. At that time, if you were a Zionist, you left to Palestine. That was the meaning of being Zionist. Today, you can be an evangelical, Protestant, whatever, and live in the USA, and you're a Zionist. At that time, it was different. So all the 97% of the Jews that did not live to Palestine were either non-Zionist or anti-Zionist. So if you tell now that anti-Zionists are anti-Semites, it means that actually your victims are the anti-Semites. You're the good one. You're the one who's fighting anti-Semitism. So this is a very perverse way, and it's very hard to deal with this madness that we are all dealing with, because we see what's going on in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Rafah. We see everything, you know, and then we are told by our media, no, this is not true. Israel defended itself. It didn't happen. We see how that's the first time in history that we see that the perpetrator is putting, you know, is making a show out of the crimes that he's doing. So it's very hard, you know, to oppose that. On the other hand, we have a lot of support among people who are afraid to talk, because there is such a big oppression and suppression of free speech, of, you know, what you're allowed to say, that we have also many people who follow us and who are very thankful that we are talking. Because the polls in Germany shows that something like 80% of the people do not agree with the policy of the German government, but they are afraid to talk. So, you know, it's also a splitted role or a situation to be in, and very crazy, because we as Jews have to fight in order to be able to speak today. And we are suppressed like people, you know, before the Second World War started. we had the first one that were persecuted were people who thought differently, communists, for example. You know, after that came the Jews. But we are all in one, yeah. And if we talk also about women, Jewish women, you get also sexism. You get also, you know, anti-Germans who come to you. You know, they were born 30 years ago, whatever, and then they try to explain you how it is in the Israeli army without being there, without having any idea. But I think that will make them good Jews.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, and I want to probably close on this. My generation, I was born in the 80s. My generation was, as a leftist activist, we were raised with listening and reading to authors like Naomi Klein, Noam Chomsky, following Bernie Sanders, and listening to Jon Stewart and Aaron Sorkin on the media. Like, the smear of being called anti-Semite for us was something that struck hard, and it was extremely vile. But I have to say that since October the 7th, I've met and loved and learned so much from Jewish, Israeli activists and people who stood up. And I never loved so much what you do, and I never had so much respect and admiration and feeling empathy for your position, because it must be one of the toughest thing one can do, to being called as wrong in being who you are because of what you think. The level of rage that I would feel in your praise, it would be unmeasurable. So this is to say a giant thank you, and this is our part in what we do to fight anti-Semitism, because months and months of broadcasting of genocide with the subtitle, "You gotta love this, otherwise you hate Jews." It was probably the most effective anti-Semite message I've ever seen. And to give volumes and to give voice and to show and present that that stereotype is wrong, and that there is tons of people, thousands, dozens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews all across the world that are not agreeing with this, that don't agree with this, that are fighting, that are risking their life to fight this, and many of them died actually trying to fight this. It's our part to actually support what you're doing, because it's one of the greatest challenge I've ever seen in the past decades. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate everything you did up until now, and this beautiful half an hour where you had the chance to tell us what you've been through.
Thank you. May I add one word, one sentence? Yeah. I think it's important to understand that. I mean, it's hard that people hate you, you know, and that they think as Jews we are the wrong Jews, but we still exist. If you are hated, you still exist. That's in contradiction to Palestinians. I mean, Palestinians do not even exist. They are not even being spoken with. They are just being beaten by the police. Yeah. So what we are facing now, you know, it's not nice. It's problematic. It's a bad sign for the development of the society. It's a symptom which is very bad, but we still exist, at least. Yeah. So it could be worse, and I think therefore, I mean, we are there in order also to help Palestinians and people who are suppressed and don't get their rights, and it's done in the name of Jews, to say that's wrong. We are not in our name. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You're absolutely right, and it gives even more credit to you that you say that. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you.